And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
We're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, we've got a lot to get to in the program today. Will the Sweet 16 and playing Kentucky once again be too big for the Vols? Why and why not? We'll discuss. Also, Tony Jones will join us. We'll visit with him, former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee. Boo Carter, the next Travis Hunter? I don't think so. We'll discuss some players that he's probably a better comparison to. One won a Heisman. You probably know who he is. And my looking back, his numbers were not all that impressive. Mike Matthews opens up about his decision to enter the transfer portal. Make you feel any different about him? Do you hold a grudge at all whatsoever this day in Tennessee sports history? Stat of the day, Donnie Tindle linked to McNeese State. Wow, this would be a great move. Troy Henderson commits to the Vols. Could he be the next Zakai Ziegler? Also, the Lady Vols or the men, do they have a better shot at winning this week? We'll end it with Tony Jones as we get off and rolling. Please hit that thumbs up button, the like button. We greatly appreciate that. And if you haven't subscribed to this point, what are you thinking? Go ahead and do that right now. All right, Caleb, we'll get into today's tough question brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. But first, your feel of this Tennessee basketball team going into the Sweet 16. We've had some time to kind of let it soak in a little bit. I think they're well equipped to win and advance to the first school Final Four, which sounds so weird for a Tennessee program that had an Ernie and Bernie, had a Ray Mears that made that program into something in the 70s and has had success, had NBA players over the past 20 or so years. It is bizarre that Tennessee just hasn't stumbled into the Final Four at some point.
No, that's very true. And first off, I am very well. Thank you for asking, Dave. I'm glad Dan Yoder asked since you didn't ask.
Yes,
shout
how
out
are
to
you
Dan
doing,
Yoder on the message boards. No, it is weird, but it's not weird when you really break it down. And let me explain. So, like Ernie and Bernie, that was a 2-year run in the 70s. But then you talk about the players they had in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. But Dave, as you have aptly pointed out over time, the administration never bothered to hire a good head coach during those time periods. So while the talent was there, you had a couple of coaches that just didn't really bother to get the best out of that talent.
Well, Doug Dickey, let's face it. How long was he the athletic director?
From like 85 to 2002.
Okay. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I mean, I'm not throwing him under the bus because what he did on the football field resulted in 2 championships in the late 90s, success like the Sugar Balls. And, well, that would have been – he didn't make the majors hire. Let's just give him Fulmer credit, though. 2 championships in the late 90s and a national championship. He presided over some great times of football, so I can't knock his tenure. But did he care about basketball? Not one iota.
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, you could see that because Doug Dickey takes over as athletic director in 1985. And I just want to point this out. Don DeVoe, when he was at Tennessee, his first 5 years, he makes the NCAA tournament. That's the Dale Ellis years. The next 2 years, he makes the NIT. But remember, those were 2 young teams with the Tony White era coming up. And then
the Wizard. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then Doug Dickey takes over as athletic director in 85. And Tony White's entering his junior year. But somehow Tennessee just regresses significantly the next 2 years and has losing records. And you start to think what happened. Some things I've read is Doug Dickey just pulled like almost all support for the basketball program in that moment.
Well, and Doug Dickey was a little bit ahead of his time. He was a former football coach, but he also had a business mind. And he saw on the line item that, I'm just throwing numbers out there, Caleb, don't quote me on this, but if you really invest into basketball, you maybe can make $1 million or $2 million more a year, maybe even 4 or 5 back in those days. But nowadays, you can make a significant amount of money. It was always going to pale in comparison to football, and probably always will, especially after Rick Barnes retires, whenever that might be. I doubt Tennessee's going to get as successful and beloved head coach as Barnes when they replace him. Caleb, I wonder what will become of Tennessee basketball when Barnes doesn't retire. Maybe that's a topic for tomorrow. Let's get to
today's. And one last thing we have to point out, just in defense of Doug Dickey, let's not forget this. Rory Kramer also cared nothing about basketball, and he was a huge part of the SEC not being relevant in basketball at all for years. It wasn't until Mike Slive took over as commissioner that the SEC actually made an investment in basketball.
No, great. Portions of the program are brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com, QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo that Dave and Caleb said, hey, Bo, we appreciate them being a part of Off the Hook Sports. All right, Caleb. Tennessee is, I believe, a high-character basketball team that is not going to shy away from a big moment. They're mature. They're going to keep the game close because of their defense. But you asked the question, will the Sweet 16 and Kentucky, who they've lost to this season, be too big for Tennessee? I want to get your thoughts on why, and we do that right now. Today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun.
And it's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Caleb, why do you think that Tennessee could shy away from this huge monstrous moment that some have argued, including ESPN writer Chris Lowe, is the most anticipated or biggest game in Tennessee?
And I've argued that too.
Yes, which you definitely could make that argument. Caleb, why do you have any sort of concern that this team would shy away? Because I don't.
I think there are times where, if you look through history, particularly in Tennessee basketball, the moment gets so overwhelming, you almost wilt. And here, let me explain what I mean by this. You would say, and you would think that because this team is senior laden, that they would be very mature and able to handle the moment, right?
Yes.
Because of how many seniors. I would argue when you're very loaded, when you're totally loaded with seniors, Dave, you sometimes actually melt down in front of the pressure. And here's why. You start to think, oh, this is my last shot. This is my last moment. If I lose it here, it's over. Whereas if you're a bunch of juniors, this is the funny thing. When you're a bunch of juniors playing as an underdog, you sometimes actually do better because there's just no pressure on you, because you feel like you're playing with house money, right? If you know you're all coming back the next year.
Right.
Quick example of this is the
2000. Like in the Jerry Green era, they played with house money far too often.
Yes, it can go the other way. But just a quick example is 2007 Tennessee, Ohio State. In basketball, they almost beat Ohio State when Ohio State went to the national title game that year with Mike Conley and Greg Oden. And Tennessee got a 20-point lead. They blew the lead. They lost by 1, but they played much better in that game than they did in the Sweet 16 the next year against Louisville. Why? Yes, Louisville was a bad matchup for them, but the other part of that is that I think Chris Lofton and Juwan Smith were kind of feeling like, oh man, this is just our last chance to do anything special. And this Tennessee basketball team, look, Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, Jemai Meshack, particularly Ziegler and Meshack, who want to play and do this for Rick Barnes, you worry that they could start to think, man, this is our last chance. And then not only is it their last chance, but then you get to the fact that it's not for themselves. They see this as maybe Barnes' last real chance to make a run at a Final Four. And you wonder, can that combine with playing a team that swept them, playing them in the Sweet 16, what I think is the biggest game in history for Tennessee, can that make the moment too big? And you wonder with that. And just one other quick thing, Dave. You watched that. Remember the 97 game where Peyton Manning lost to Florida?
Yes, very well.
I know Peyton Manning was under a ton of pressure and there was no running game that day. It did feel like Peyton Manning knew it was his last chance to beat Florida, though, and put way too much on himself to try to win that game, didn't he?
Yes. No, there's no question about it. All right, so Chad says, Caleb is wrong. This team is different, and Chaz is not the same Chaz we had in the regular season. In my opinion, I'll give you my thoughts on that. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks and Jones. All right, so here's why I have no concern in that regard. Senior Layden plays defense. Those are not the type of teams that can just go cold. You remember Auburn's Final Four run when they hit every three they took in March until they got to the Final Four. That team, I thought, had to have a lot of good fortune to make it to win a championship because they were relying on their outside shooting. That usually doesn't last for 3 weeks. Sometimes it can. It's happened before, but usually doesn't last. Caleb, I don't think this team's makeup allows it to get shocked, surprised, scared, whatever the word you might want to use. I do think there's something to be said for the fact that they're playing for Rick Barnes, and I think that's significant. And we heard Jemai Mashack talk about that. Could that add pressure in the final moments? Well, you're talking to somebody who has them losing to Houston in the final moments by a couple of possessions. I do find it very interesting that the periphery seems to be, and if you can look up the spread on the game, do you know the spread off the top of your head?
It was initially Tennessee 4.5.
Okay, so Tennessee, according to one ESPN metric, has a 39.6% of doing what you said, which is wilting and losing. That Kentucky only has a 39% chance of beating Tennessee. Does that number surprise you?
No, that makes sense. I'll tell you the number that surprises me is the over-under set at 144.5, which suggests that Tennessee's going to score, if Tennessee were to cover the spread, if I'm just doing the math in my head real quick, I believe Tennessee would score 74 points and Kentucky would score 70, or Tennessee would score 75 and Kentucky would score 70. So Tennessee would either win the game 74-70 or 75-70. That kind of shocks me because Kentucky's defense is not that good. They score a lot at will. I thought somebody would set the over-under either really low. If you thought Tennessee was going to control the pace of this game, you thought the game would be in the 60s. If you think Kentucky's going to control the pace of the game's going to be in the 80s. And right. So the
80s would be 160. So they're kind of in between, right?
They're in between. Yeah, that's what's I think it's throwing me off. I thought if you were going to favor Tennessee by 4.5, you would have the over-under set in the 130s, low 130s.
Here's my thing with Kentucky. I've been around a lot of teams that got a lot of feel goods. If you look at Tennessee and their draw back when they were making runs at the Sweet 16 previously, they had Southwest Missouri State one year. They had Delaware. The next year, they had Charlotte. They had a favorable draw. I thought even earlier in the 2001 season, Caleb, when they lost to North Carolina. So there are a lot of feel-goods going on now. And remember that Mark Pope gets his team there after a lot of people thought that they just not that good. But Mark Pope is horrible in the tournament as well. Let's not forget that. So I feel like the feel-goods, they're getting a lot of those, Caleb. But at the end of the day, the meat of the meal is that Tennessee is widely expected to win by a couple of possessions and even metrics straight up. So I feel like Kentucky is more likely to get blindsided and wilt in the moment than actually Tennessee.
That's possible. And look, it could be possible too that, and this happens, Kentucky swept Tennessee. Do you think that they're so inexperienced they could feel themselves a little too much, thinking that they are much better than they are against this team?
Absolutely. No, I do believe that totally. And I believe that is realistic. Let's not forget. Let's look at Mark Pope's track record. I mean, he could soon be
highly mediocre.
Yeah. I mean, he could soon be, we'll come up with a funny alliteration while you come up with the poll question concerning Tennessee's maturity and if you're worried about them wilting at all. But you've got BYU when he was there. Of course, they didn't have a postseason in 2020. Then he went to the round of 64 and then the NIT quarterfinals. Then he goes to BYU. He makes the round of 64 and he's out. Mark Pope hasn't done anything, nothing whatsoever in any sort of tournament that matters. He made the semifinals for the CBI, but that's a big who cares.
Until this year, though. Until this year. He's in the Sweet 16 now, so we have to be fair to him on that.
No, I just don't have any faith that he goes much deeper. I'm actually kind of a little bit surprised he got this far.
Yeah, I think, things I had learned about Mark Pope, and I made fun of the hire because of the things I had read and what I saw in the NCAA tournament in his past. From what I've learned, based on what he was allowed to recruit and do at BYU, he had a lot more simplified of a scheme than he does at Kentucky, because he just couldn't do the type of thing. Like, one of the things he just couldn't do, like things like inbound plays and draw up things like that he wanted to do when he was at BYU. So he's actually opened up what he does at Kentucky much more than he did at BYU, and that includes the offense and the three-point shooting. So I think that is the difference. The question with Kentucky will be, like, here's where the moment can get scary for Tennessee. And this is the truth, though. Look, Kentucky's a really, really, really good three-point shooting team. I mean, they are 30th in the top 30 in three-point percentage, top 40 in three-pointers made. If they shoot the ball well, say they come out shooting extremely well, if you're Tennessee, does Tennessee panic then and say, oh, man, they're shooting really well? Or do they say, they're not going to continue shooting like this?
I don't think so. If Kentucky shoots really well, then they're going to win. I mean, that's tournament basketball. And you pointed out before, it shouldn't probably be a single elimination tournament, but we don't have that much time in our lives to have it best of 3 or best of 5 or best of 7. Unsung says Kentucky probably thinks because they swept us, in their mind, they've already won this game. That's a dangerous mindset. I agree. I think Kentucky is much more likely to wilt than Tennessee is. I just don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, see, there's one big difference, though. There's one big problem. Kentucky would feel that way, but then Vegas decided to get in the way and tell them that they're 4.5-point underdogs. I think by being underdogs, they are going to take the game seriously now, and they're going to be personally motivated, and they probably are upset about this. I mean, Dave, I'm just going to the 2001 Tennessee-Florida game in football. How much did Tennessee being 18-point underdogs have a factor in them winning that game?
It was a huge factor, and I think that is a factor from time to time. But I don't think I guess they could say to themselves, listen, I think we break down the psychological aspect of sports far too often in football. I think that for the most part, you're able to go out there and hit somebody and the emotions aren't really a part of it. And once you get into the game, you're good. I do think it affects you during the week to practice at a higher level. Basketball is different. If anything like that does creep into their mind of, oh, the pressure is on because Rick Barnes might retire and I'm a senior, that can affect your shot. And that can have an effect. I just think it's more likely to have an effect with Kentucky. They believe they're just going to walk over Tennessee. I don't believe that's going to be the case.
I hope they're not stupid enough to believe that.
I don't know, man. I've been around a lot of kids play basketball. I call them kids. I know they're young men. Well, they are in Tennessee's case. They're almost more kids in Kentucky's case. It's a younger basketball team. It's 3 full days of hearing how great you are. Actually 4 if you count Sunday. I don't know if they still go to class or anymore or not, but they're somewhere in public, right? I mean, they're hearing from somebody. There's Kentucky fans everywhere. So they just come out of the coal mine left and right. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Still so incredibly happy with my Jeep. Absolutely love it. East Tennessee's largest volume dealer, and the buying process is sublime. You will be absolutely blown away, and you can get incredible deals just like I did at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Parkside Drive and on Kingston Pike as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. All right, coming up, Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Boo Carter is not the next Travis Hunter, despite what Caleb wants to believe. How about 30 seconds from Ted Russell Ford Lincoln?
Like a blast from the past, the super dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or
That's hot.
Where do you stand? Hot or cold? Brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. 50 years in East Tennessee. CityHeatandAir.com. On Off the Hook Sports.
All right, Caleb. Hot or cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Let me go ahead and ask you to begin. If you put the over-under at catches and or yards for Boo Carter, where would you have them? I'll tell you where I'll have them. I've said before, 19.5. If he catches more than 19.5 passes, or I'll even say touches the ball 19.5 times or more, then he's done a great job. I would be very impressed by that. I would be impressed by Tennessee's innovation. Yardage, I'll say 349.5. In other words, over 350 yards. Good job all around, guys. We weren't just being fooled in spring camp, which I can't help but wonder if that's the case. Where would you put the over-under? Because I know you would have the over on both of those numbers.
Oh, I would. I'm just going to tell you a quick thing, though. If you know Josh Heupel's system, you're right. 19.5 is better than you think. A quick history lesson real quick. Josh Heupel's first year on the job at Tennessee, Javonte Payton had 18 catches. Dave, guess how many touchdowns he had among those 18 catches?
Lay it on me.
6. A third of his catches were touchdowns, and he had 413 yards. So he had 31.8 yards per I'm sorry, not yard. Yeah. He had 22.9 yards per catch. It basically every time Javonte Payton caught the ball, he took it to the house. So at 19.5, man, if he catches 19.5 balls, I see 500 yards receiving minimum then at that point. And so I'm going over. I'm going to set the over under at 18. I'm going to set it at 17.5. I'm going to set it at 17.5 because of the Javonte Payton number. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm setting it at 17.5 because the Javonte Payton magic number was 18. And so I think if Boo Carter gets 18 catches, you're going to see about 6 touchdowns. So I'll just throw that out there.
Okay, but you like the over in both situations, right? You like him
Yes.
catching 20 or more.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Yes. But well, the hard thing for me is catches is tricky for me. If you set it at 19.5, I may go under. And the only reason, and let me explain, it's not the catches, it's the yards he's going to get once he catches the ball. So he may not get a lot of catches because he'll just take the ball to the house every time he catches it.
okay. Here's my problem with this. I got a couple of different problems. One, you're asking a lot. You're asking for a season that would make Charles Woodson Heisman campaign pale in comparison. And by the way, Woodson had 2 years to get adapted to the offense. They started playing him as a sophomore, and he left early, if I remember correctly. But he definitely was a factor in his last 2 years. So before I dive into some numbers and what is reasonable, it's not Travis Hunter with 92 passes caught for 1,152 yards and 14 touchdowns. That's not going to happen. Let me give you a reason why. Caleb, once you go out there and you start a drive for this Tennessee football team, you finish the drive. And the reason you finish the drive is because they don't like to sub. So you can't go out there and just run a special package other than the only thing I could imagine would be goal line when they did some interesting things with Princeton Fant and that sort of thing. I don't believe that you're going to want Boo Carter out there more than 20, 25 snaps because of what he brings you on defense. I don't think he can be in there for entire drives. That's the problem as I see it.
Well, and also let's point this out. Josh Heupel has some championships to play for, whereas Colorado was, I mean, they were in the playoff running late, but then they lost to Kansas on November the 23rd. And I think after that, the last week, Oklahoma State, they just focused on getting Travis Hunter his touches. But Colorado was playing to get Travis Hunter the Heisman last year more than they were playing for a playoff appearance. Is that fair to say? And
yeah. I mean, it was obvious that Deion Sanders wanted to make a little mini Deion.
Yeah, exactly.
He wanted a guy to do that. Pragmatically, he may be right. It may make him sell some.
It was good for recruiting. That's what he needed to do at Colorado last year more than anything, was recruit the talent.
Yeah, but I also wonder if you're going to have guys say, only one dude's going to do that, you're not going to have a bunch of guys playing both ways. We're not going to go back to the 50s. Boo will be a real factor this season with over 350 yards and 20 or more catches. Yes, they need him with 25% of the vote. No, I'll believe it when I see it. The other factor is this is essentially Boo Carter's first year at receiver, right, Caleb?
Yep.
What do first-year receivers at Tennessee typically do?
In Josh Heupel's offense?
Yes.
Unless you count the first-year receivers, Josh Heupel's first year there.
Yeah, where he had to play somebody.
Okay, I'm just saying, Javonte Payton was a transfer, and I just told you 400 yards, 6 touchdowns on just 18 catches.
Okay, well, I'm just here to tell you that I don't think that's going to be the case. Let's get to Hot or Cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Let's start with Charles Woodson. Now, Boo Carter can match these numbers, and this is the most accomplished player that I looked up. They were the three. One was the most recent. One was the two-way player I thought was overlooked, and then there was Charles Woodson, who we all know about because he beat Peyton Manning out for the Heisman. Woodson caught just 11 passes for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns in 97. He ran the ball 3 times for 15 yards and a touchdown. I think that's doable. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to say that's his stat line at the end of the season, I think he's done okay. Now, Champ Bailey, he's probably not going to do this. 47 passes caught.
Wait, I don't get to say if I'm hot on I don't get to say if I'm hot on Charles Woodson.
I forgot to go hot. Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters, 50 years in East Tennessee.
That's hot.
I'll tell you that's hot. I think you can do that.
I'm hot on that too. I think he can absolutely match Charles Woodson's numbers on both sides of the ball.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to leave you out. Then you have Champ Bailey, who the next season put up far more impressive numbers than Woodson and got no sniff of the Heisman. Why? Because the Heisman Trust embarrassed themselves by not giving it to Peyton Manning. Bailey caught 47 passes for 744 yards and 5 touchdowns in 98. If Boo Carter does that, they've got a real problem with their other skill position players. They don't. If he's chipping in 750 yards, I don't know if this season's gone the way you wanted it to.
All right. Dave, I'm hot. And let me explain why.
I'm cold.
I'm hot. Guys, Boo Carter's not just going to be on offense. He's going to be Tennessee's starting slot receiver. Okay?
True.
And you heard what Josh Heupel said yesterday at spring ball, guys. He said that Amari Jefferson is still dinged up. Amari Jefferson is not – we love Amari Jefferson on the show. He's a really smart kid. I think he's going to be really good in the offense. He's banged up. He's not going to be able to pick it up this year. He's going to have to sit for a year. We also –
No, wait. Did he come out and say that definitively?
No, but Heupel was asked about Amari Jefferson and basically just talked about how he was injured at the start of spring ball.
Well, yeah, he has been. But Amari told me he would be 100% by fall camp. Now, that could be an optimistic viewpoint, but I don't think it's for sure.
I think Josh Heupel is – yes, but Josh Heupel wants Boo Carter in this slot spot because this is what Boo Carter demanded. So Braylon Staley and Amari Jefferson will back up Boo Carter in the slot. That's how this is going to happen.
Point. I can tell you one thing he wants, and that is for Amari Jefferson to be a factor for more than just this year. I think he's more of a long-term guy because why? Josh Heupel doesn't put a lot on first-year receivers. He just doesn't. Mike Matthews should make that step. Chris Brazzell should make that step. Braylon Staley should make that step. Those are the 3 guys. Boo Carter, to me, is just kind of in the other conversation with guys that might make a step.
So
and might make a step doesn't equal 750 yards.
So let's talk about Tennessee's slot receivers, Heupel's first 2 years on the job, though, Dave. Okay. Velus Jones Jr., 62 catches for 807 yards and 7 touchdowns.
That went well.
The next year, Jalen Hyatt. Obviously, 67 catches, 1,267 yards, 15 touchdowns. If the offense is humming, 800 yards is the baseline for the slot receiver. If Boo Carter is the slot receiver and the offense is doing what it needs to do, yeah, he's going to go over 765 yards.
All right. So the last one is Travis Hunter. Read out his stat line if you don't mind, because it is. I mean, if you didn't watch a lot of West Coast-ish football and you didn't see Hunter a lot, he was pretty special.
I mean, he was a
full-time two-way guy.
Watching Travis Hunter last year was like watching McGuire hit 70 home runs in 98 even like it was must see TV. Everybody was watching, but the Cardinals weren't even in the playoff race. Remember, everybody forgets that part about the home run chases. The Cardinals weren't even in the playoff race. Everybody just wanted to see McGuire play, and it's similar with Travis Hunter because the Buffaloes.
So true. I can remember pulling over and going to an O'Charlie's. Do you remember O'Charlie's back in the day?
Yes, I remember O'Charlie's.
Yeah, and I remember I wanted to see that, and I'm not a big baseball guy, but you're right. Travis Hunter. I don't think a lot of our fan base saw him a lot because it is West Coast-ish. They played later games, and you probably don't like Dion. A lot of you don't. I know you don't, even though everything he says comes true, and he's had great success. So I don't know that a lot of people are familiar with just how much of an impact. You can't overstate what he did for that team last year.
Yes. Yeah, he had 96 catches for 1,258 yards and 15 touchdowns. He was must-see TV for those who watch it, and he had 4 interceptions. I mean, he was must-see television last year for a team that, again, did push for the playoff but didn't end up making it, and you weren't even watching for the playoff. You were watching for that. So
David says if Boo is better than Staley, Jefferson, or Dodson, that's a problem. What are your thoughts?
No, it's not. I disagree. I think Boo.
I agree with that.
Huh?
I tend to agree with that.
I think Dotson and Jefferson are new in the system. Boo, at the very least, Dave, you say, first-year receivers, but I mean, like, when you defend it, you have some familiarity with an offense you're going up against every day in practice, right?
Sure.
And he's been going up against this offense for 2 years now. So he's already somewhat familiar with it. And on top of that, Boo versus Staley's somewhat familiar with it too because he was in it last year. If it's 55-45, 50-50, well, guess what? Boo Carter threatened and leveraged the transfer portal last year or this offseason unless he got to play on offense.
All right. Now, Derek says, look at Squirrel's stats. That's more realistic. Huh. So I pulled those up. That wasn't in my column that you can read on offthehooksports.com. 34 receptions, 381 yards. That's about where I was in terms.
I'm hot on him surpassing that.
Okay.
He'll double that.
Okay. I think that's a very reasonable goal, and I'll tell you why. Again, Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Give me 30 seconds, and I'll tell you why I don't think he matches those numbers.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Okay. They need him to be an elite defensive player, especially with what they have to replace, and then they have to deal with the injury to the young man's name, the corner. I can't remember his name all of a sudden.
Jamal McCoy.
Yeah, Jamal McCoy. So, I mean, you need him on defense. I find it hard to believe he's going to play offense, then return a punt, or he's going to play defense, return a punt, and then play offense. So my question for you, Caleb, would you rather Boo Carter be a great defensive back or a good two-way player?
Good two-way player because wait, let me finish. They're sticking him in at nickel. I don't think he's going to be able to have the type of impact as a great defensive back at nickel that you would expect him to have. I think he can be elite on offense. And so two-way player, I think if he's not at the slot, Dave, there's going to be some issues with Tennessee at the slot. I think they have some issues there. So and I wanted to bring a couple of other comparisons and see if you're hot on them. I wanted to drop a few of my own in, if you got a second.
The message board's live, so let me work this comment if I can in real quick. General Ursa says if Boo ends up being the man, we really need to start questioning Heupel's and the staff's wide receiver talent evaluation because that means you got entire class of wide receivers that are busts.
No, Boo's just that good. All right,
if he's a special player who ends up being a top 10 draft pick, I'm with you. But anything short of that, then I've got to wonder about Josh Heupel's talent evaluation at wide receiver.
All right, well, I'm going to name one other guy, and then I'm going to name a former Tennessee player that he could be like. So first, someone brought up Chris Gamble. And in 2002, Ohio State won the national title thanks to a terrible pass interference call. But Chris Gamble had 35 catches for 293 yards, and he also had 4 interceptions, including a pick 6. I think Boo Carter can surpass 293 yards, right?
293, yes, but I'm going to go to Dylan's comment. We're saying that first-year Boo Carter is better than 3-year experience. Squirrel, pump the brakes.
Squirrel was hurt. And also the tackles didn't allow Nico to run the offense the way he wanted to because they were banged up through the first half of the season. All right, now my next comparison, my final one. Dave, I'm going to throw one out here, and you covered him. So,
okay.
Mark Jones, 2003.
Oh, Boo's far more talented than Mark Jones.
But Mark Jones had 36 catches for 556 yards and 5 touchdowns that year.
Okay, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good
he
one.
Also
Maybe there's a follow-up column with Squirrel.
And he also had 2
Mark Jones.
Just to finish, he also had 2 interceptions that year. And most importantly, Mark Jones was sent on the blitz that forced that Brock Berlin interception that basically sealed the game for Tennessee against Miami.
Yes.
Because Brock Berlin somehow doesn't. I never knew a quarterback that can't see a crossing route when he's being blitzed.
Rustastic says, great comment. I agree. Boo can't be Zakai Ziegler or in trouble. I agree. You can't put that much on him. Let me say, okay, so I've got this for you. I've got one that Tennessee likes to lock in their 3 receivers throughout a drive. So I think Boo has to know more of the offense. Then you have how valuable he is on defense. This is all reasons why I don't think he's going to have a major impact on offense. I'll tell you where the impact is going to be. It's going to be on the goal line. They're going to do some interesting things with him, whether it's an end around or that sort of thing, because Tennessee, a lot of times on those long pass plays, they'll get a timeout or the other team will fake an injury. And then you're set up inside the red zone. And you can do some things with him, and you know he doesn't have to have a firm grasp of 20 different plays or 100 different plays or 500 different plays. He just has to know I'm about to run the end around.
Like Derek Tinsley against Miami in 2003.
Yeah. I mean,
okay. So
he's not going to have as big of an impact.
But Dave, see, the thing is, obviously, the right thing to do on the goal line is to do what Butch Jones always did and get in shotgun and hand the ball to Jalen Hurd from shotgun, right? That's the most effective way to score a touchdown on the goal line.
The tush push is supposed to be outlawed.
Yeah, so
it's a weird thing for a grown man to say.
Heupel, to his credit, gets under center a lot on the goal line. I don't see the creativity the way you do anymore on the goal line because Alex Golish isn't there. But to Heupel's credit,
Boo's not going to play at all.
No, there's no creativity. He's going to be the starting slot receiver. He's going to be the starting slot receiver. Boo Carter, Braylon Staley. Who's starting it in the slot?
I think Braylon Staley will. I think that Boo will be a changeup. Our poll question, I'd rather Boo Carter be a great DB, 56% of the vote, a good two-way player.
Well, whatever. That 56% is wrong. Good two-way player is the right answer.
Okay, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Stat of the day is now, as it's brought to you by our fantastic friends at Sports Treasures. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures. That's a lot of sports treasures. And I'll tell you what, Sports Treasures will take care of you. If you just follow them on Facebook, you'll love it. A lot of people following them now. I've seen throughout the past couple of days, and we appreciate that. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN. It is time for the stat of the day.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
The minute Boo Carter goes out there and runs the wrong route and it results in an interception that affects the golden child, as I believe Josh Heupel thinks of Nico Iamaleava. The minute that happens, Boo Carter's done with offense the rest of the year. I don't care if that happens in September or November, Caleb.
You see, you're mistaking the slots for the wideouts. The slots don't actually have to do the same. Ability to run the right route is not as the onus is not as much on the slot receivers to do that as the wideouts. The reads are much simpler for the slot receivers.
Okay, I'm going to respectfully disagree with that. I think that they have to read the safety, and there's a lot of pressure on them. But let's get the stat of the day now, Caleb. What do you got? Do you want the music bet or not? Kind of. Did you watch the? What was the Will Ferrell? Maybe somebody can help me on the message board when they did the. You You remember that?
More cowbell?
Was it the Roxbury or something like that where they did the head bob? I know it's before your time. I've gotten an idea of how old you are after we've worked together for.
I'm just saying.
Night at the Roxbury. That's what it was. I think.
I'm the only person that went to raves and enjoyed the light show without doing any drugs. Like people were like, I need the drugs to like enhance it. And I actually just enjoyed the light show of the raves without the drugs, guys.
You remember the Regus downtown?
No, I do not.
It was kind of a hoity-toity restaurant. It was nice. And I had a meeting there one time and I was just going to walk around. I was thinking about something that was on my mind. And I accidentally walked into this warehouse and it was a rave. It's just like 9 o'clock at night and all these kids are just out of it, just laying there. I don't know what you take at a rave, but I got water and went home. All right. Out of the day.
Over the last 8 years, dating back to 2017, Tennessee is one of just 8 teams with at least 200 victories in basketball, joined by Auburn, Duke, Gonzaga, Houston, Kansas, Purdue, and St. Mary's. Tennessee is among three of those teams. Tennessee, Houston, and Purdue are playing in the Midwest Regional in Indianapolis this weekend in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, all right. Now, Hoghead wants one final shot at Caleb Calhoun's very optimistic view of Boo Carter. I don't think Boo plays a snap on offense. That's just something the coaches are throwing out there to troll people. I don't think they're throwing it out there to troll people. I think they're throwing it out there to keep him happy.
This is why Boo Carter did not transfer, guys.
Yes. That's what's going on, right?
That's exactly what's going on.
I mean, you have to admit, as optimistic as you are, Boo Carter, there's a very good chance that they're just doing this to keep him happy and he's only going to play defense this year. There's a chance.
Right. No, exactly. There's a very good chance.
Well, Dylan says you take everything at a rave. Such as the case.
Well, Derek says I was a DD. Derek, no, we didn't drive to this stuff. I wasn't sober. I just wasn't doing drugs.
Oh.
I was doing legal things.
Oh. Fuman931 says, Dave, listen to Caleb. All right, I usually do. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. You want me to just leave that up there, that Dave listened to Caleb? Do you like that?
Why not? Let's do it.
I figured you would. All right, think of a poll question, Caleb. We can spin this forward. We can move it how you want to. Again, we'll be back in just 2 minutes as what are we going to kick around? Well,
we're going to talk about Mike Matthews and him detailing his decisions to stay at Tennessee, and we'll see if we believe it or not.
Yeah, I was just asking myself. But thanks for updating me. Also, this day in Tennessee sports history, Troy Henderson commits to Tennessee. What does it say about Rick Barnes' future? I think it says a lot. Also, Donnie Tindle. This would be a great hire by McNeese State. I may be the exact opposite. Tony Jones, former Tennessee associate head basketball coach, will join us as well. It's important to those guys. You want to get the title in there right. 2 minutes off Thug Sports. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
And here we go.
This was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, built different, said Travis Smith needs to be very involved in this year's passing game, passing offense this year. He will not be. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, it's not. At what point have we seen this movie before? In the 3 years that Josh Heupel wasn't a first-year head coach, what happened? I mean, he didn't have any first-year receivers have an impact.
No, he did not. That is true, but I still So true freshmen aren't going to do it. Or first-year starters aren't going to do it. Now, Bukar, I don't consider a first-year receiver the way Dave does, because I think having gone up against the offense in practice for a year still makes you familiar with it. Maybe even more familiar with it, honestly.
Okay. Our poll question, what is it, Caleb?
Our poll question.
Rave or rage? What is it again?
It's a rave, but I'd rather Boo Carter be a great have you ever been to a rage?
Yeah.
Wow, Dave. We gotta change this. Have you ever been to a rage?
I got it. Okay. So you have several, is that what you're telling me?
I've been to several raves, yeah.
Understand that. All right. Have you ever been to a rave? I don't know. It's just super weird to me. Everybody was like,
a rager is just a party where you get wasted.
Oh, okay. Well, not in a rage. That's different. All right. So there you go. It's the poll.
Sometimes ragers will throw people into rages, if you know what I'm talking about.
Don't. So have you ever been to a rave? All right, here we go. So Troy Henderson commits to Tennessee. What does this say about Rick Barnes? Well, I think it says quite a bit. And I think the fact that you would make this decision says quite a bit as well. 4 Downs is right now, and it's brought to you by our good friends at Double D Piping.
Come on, guys, it's game time.
4 Downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show.
All right, Caleb with Caleb Calhoun. There it is. All right, so let me ask you, what was your initial reaction to Troy Henderson committing to the Vols?
Kind of shocked me, but honestly, I had been because it happened at the height of the NCAA tournament, as we're all covering that, and I was like, this is weird that this comes out now. And then I realized the transfer portal has opened during March Madness, which is bizarre. So it kind of made sense that they would maybe add a recruit now. And with Amari Evans and Dwayne Brown already committed, I was wondering what Barnes's future held, because he doesn't have the greatest class coming in next year. But I thought, you know what, my first reaction was, as we'll get to, another developmental project of a player that Rick Barnes scouted that a lot of people don't know about.
Okay, first down is this. He goes from Fordham to Tennessee. He was committed to Fordham, and he makes his decision for Tennessee. I'm sorry, but that's not exactly Duke and North Carolina calling, is it?
No, this is a Rick Barnes scouting project. Troy Henderson is 6'1" from Richmond, Virginia, John Marshall High School, 6'1", 180. 247 has him a 3-star, but there's no composite rankings, no rivals rankings, no on-3 rankings or anything like that. So, and it gives me the vibe that, again, Fordham, he committed to Fordham back in August of 2024, and then he decommitted on March 21st. So it looks like Tennessee was just finding him out of nowhere. My understanding is he's a versatile point guard that's kind of a playmaker. And this is
Tony Harris.
Huh?
That makes me think of Tony Harris.
Yes, but it could also make you think of the next guy we're about to discuss in a second. So you can go positive or negative on this. And also, as you have said many times, Dave, if Tony Harris played for Rick Barnes, he would be viewed a lot differently at Tennessee.
Well, he'd start by just playing one position, which would be probably a benefit to his career.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
So this is Rick Barnes' scouting, is what I'm saying.
Hold on now, Caleb.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay, does this mean Rick Barnes is sticking around? I'm not willing to go that far, but I think he's planning always to stick around. And then he evaluates it at the end of the season. And as I wrote in a column on Off the Hook Sports, based off every indication I've been talking to sources, he doesn't know if he's retiring after this year. And he's not going to know until after the season. I was told by someone that was in the room that he was very close to retiring at the end of last year, and that he's a very religious person. He thought about it over prayer, and he decided to come back. But he's 1 foot out the door there, Caleb. I don't think Rick Barnes knows, but I think he plans to be around, so you don't want to have a terrible roster you walk into and you leave on a bad note.
No, and that you sound like Rick Barnes is such a decent person. He wants to make the job easier for the next guy.
No, I don't think that. I think coaches all think about themselves, even the great ones, the great men like Rick Barnes. You're still thinking about yourself.
See, this is like, if Rick Barnes was thinking to be closer to retirement, I feel like he would go all in and go for just the biggest stars he could get out of the transfer portal to make one run at a national title. So to get this guy, it feels like he's still going on the 4-year projects if he likes developing people. And I got to be honest. So I think it does mean he's staying for a while. I think he's here for another 4 years, 4 or 5 years. Because I thought in my mind,
when Bert Bertelkamp was on the show, that's what he said. He said he thought he had another 3 or 4 years in him, if you remember.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I remember. You're right. He did say that. And in my mind, I was thinking, and this is the truth, my thought went to, well, maybe he has like a coach in waiting that he wants to take over for him, and that's why he's getting these 4-year guys. But then I thought, Dave, you and I know there is a 100% chance Danny White would not accept Rick Barnes' demands for a coach in waiting. Danny White's going to go hire his guy the minute Rick Barnes retires.
Absolutely. And why wouldn't he want to?
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't want to be beholden by just the assistant coaches that are on the staff. Dylan says if Sakai comes back next year, then Barnes is 100% back. I've been curious about that. So he can go get a 5th year. Do we know that are we certain on that?
We aren't certain yet. It's going to be like a petition for the NCAA, but because he technically suffered a season-ending injury, and because he was Zakai Ziegler, his freshman year, had actually reclassified as a freshman because he was supposed to be in the 2022 class, and he ended up being in the 2021 class. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So because he reclassified, there is an argument that that year should not count against his eligibility. I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay. I'm going to do some more digging on that. Daniel says, I need a bigger tea. I do. It's a big tea. Well, the reason is I didn't have time to pour it. It was during the break. So that's why I'm not crazy. All right. 4 Downs is brought to you by Double D Piping. Again, Double D Piping when it comes to fire suppression. They're what you absolutely need. Don't forget Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. 3rd down.
All right, 3rd down, 4 Nuggets to chomp on with Troy Henderson committing to Tennessee. Is this the Zakai Ziegler effect? What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, what I mean by that is, 1, yes, it is. And 2, I think Troy Henderson sees what Rick Barnes did with Zakai Ziegler. A late commitment in the 2021 recruiting class, who reclassified for 2021, who nobody saw coming out of anywhere, nobody thought was a valuable commitment, and immediately became a fan favorite for how hard he played as a freshman and became a starter as a sophomore and is now arguably the greatest point guard in Tennessee basketball history. And because of how he developed under Rick Barnes. And I think Troy Henderson sees that and he says, heck, I'm 2 inches taller than Zakai Ziegler. I could do the same thing. And if I develop under Rick Barnes and if I embrace Rick Barnes, I could become a really, really good player. I think kids all over the country now, Dave, are seeing what Rick Barnes does with players that if they accept that they're 4-year guys or 3-year guys and that they can't go pro early, I think Rick Barnes is the coach you want to play for before anybody else because he will develop you into the best possible player you can be to try to get to the NBA.
Okay. Now, I will go ahead and tell you, this may shock you, Caleb, but coaches do lie. I'm not saying Rick Barnes has lied. I don't think he's going to be at Tennessee for 4 more years. You do. That's fine. He may well be. You may well be right. But I can tell you that Troy Henderson believes he's going to be at Tennessee for 4 years because Troy Henderson is not the type of player like a transfer like Dalton Knecht that can show up 1 year, get a little bit of the Rick Barnes tough coaching and move on. He's going to have to develop. He's not going to be ready to go pro after his freshman, sophomore, or even probably junior year.
No, he's not. And that's why Rick Barnes is perfect for him. And again, he sees Zakai Ziegler. Don't you think a lot of people see Zakai Ziegler now and say, oh, I could do that. Given all of Zakai Ziegler's limitations.
No, I can go with that.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. You may have Zakai Ziegler. You may have, players may have Zakai Ziegler's talent. Do you have his mental toughness? Do you have his physical toughness? That's the question with the Troy Henderson, because I think a lot of players look at a guy like Zakai Ziegler, and because they can do it, they think, oh, I just should go play for Rick Barnes. But a lot of that is your own mental makeup, isn't it? And you may not be as mentally tough as Zakai Ziegler.
Well, no, you may not be. Chances are you won't be. And you have to be tough to play for a coach like Rick Barnes. So, I mean, I like the fact that Henderson's ready to sign on. I wonder, you have so many of these guys, and we talk a lot about Rick Barnes and the type of guy he is and the molder of men. And I think some people get a little sick of it at times, to be quite frank. But I do think it's a factor, and I think it's a factor in young men's decisions. It makes you wonder what'll happen to Tennessee when Rick Barnes steps aside. I'm not willing to say they're going to drop off the face of the map, but there could be a transition period if a bunch of guys transfer out that wanted their 4 years with Barnes.
Let me give and let me give Troy, because we're going to talk about his we're going to ask about the things he said on fourth down in a second. But before we get there, I just want to talk about a couple quotes related to this, what you're saying about Rick Barnes. First, this is very mature of him. I think he gave a major shout out to the Fordham staff. And he said, look, I want to give them a lot of respect. They believed in me first, but it's Fordham or Tennessee. You're going to go to Tennessee, right?
Yes.
And so that was the first thing he did. And then he says that Gainey and Barnes visited him very quick. He says the nutritionist, academic advisor, they all seem to play a big role in his commitment. But then he says, quote, the Hall of Fame coaching staff, the training I'm going to get on the court, the coaching, I'm going to embrace the hard coaching from Coach Barnes and the rest of the staff. I'm going to embrace everything that comes with it. Now, that's a great sign, and that's where I get to your point of the Rick Barnes and even wanting to be the next Zakai Ziegler. But, Dave, I got a question. Do you think point guards like Troy Henderson are prepared for just how hard they're going to be coached by Rick Barnes?
Probably not. Probably nobody is. I don't know why you would just think point guards. I think across the board, they're probably not.
No, probably you're right. And the thing is, it brings out the best in some and the worst in others, right? And I mean,
any one of these players. So Tennessee now has 3 commitments for the 2025 class. Is that right?
Yeah, 3 commitments. Yeah.
I mean, how good are the other guys? Give me a quick rundown on them.
Amari Evans is a 4-star from Georgia, and Dwayne Brown II is a 3-star from Hoover, Alabama. Dwayne Brown's a 6'9" forward. Amari Evans is listed as a forward, but he's only 6'5", so he might be like one of those 6'6", 6'7" post players that you can only do that in college basketball, and then once you get to the NBA, unless you're Charles Barkley, you can't. And so,
boy, if I don't have Zakai Ziegler back next year, I'm thinking about being a TV analyst if I'm Rick Barnes. I'm just going to be real honest with you.
I think you're underestimating the next layer of Rick Barnes, which is the transfer portal, Dave.
Layer. Oh, he's proven that he can handle the transfer portal. Have you ever been to a rave? Yes, 36% of you once had a problem. No, 64% of you just like the normal, hanging out, playing video games and stuff. You don't have to get all on that. I think one of those is cat tranquilizers. Is that one of the drugs that you took back in the day, Gil?
I did not take any drugs. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Never, ever took the drugs that people like to take for raves, ever.
I'm just reading the message board. And
other people took them. I took alcohol.
You were big into cat tranquilizers, I was told.
Oh, really? By who?
Somebody on the message board.
Well, those people on the message boards don't know me.
That's true. All right. So, Caleb, where are we here? We got to fourth down.
No, we're not at fourth down yet.
Right. All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
He says, I'm going to win. Cocky or confident? 17. He's 17 years old.
Let's get exactly what he said.
Okay.
And this plays off the Zakai Ziegler moment that I feel like he wants to be the next Zakai Ziegler. Quote, Tennessee is getting a dog. They're getting a point guard that can lead, that can guard. They're getting a point guard that can get my teammates involved, and a point guard that can score on his own. I can do it all. They're getting a point guard that's a coach on the floor. I'm going to lead the team, and I'm going to win. I honestly think he just thinks he's the next Zakai Ziegler. And I really do think that. And he even said Zakai Ziegler is like a big brother to him, and that he's asked a lot of questions to Zakai Ziegler specifically. And so, I think that's where he's really landing on this. But I think it's a little cocky instead of confident, because the thing I'm saying is seeing that and I'm going to win. I think he's just very confident because of what he saw Zakai Ziegler do, that he can do this. And I'm like, that's true, but again, how mentally prepared are you for this? And you don't know until you're ready. It's like when people do, here's what playing for Rick Barnes is like, Dave. I got a great example. You said, like, somebody says they want to get in shape, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'm going to do one of those 30-minute Insanity DVD workouts. Remember the Insanity workout program? Yes. They're like, I can do it. It's just my mind. I just got to get myself mentally prepared. Then they do it for like 2 days. They're like, I can't do this. And they walk away. And that's like what playing.
I think ours was Cybergenics. Dylan says, if you like cat tranks, Caleb, wait until you get some horse tranks. Isn't that what ketamine is? Didn't somebody tell me that one time?
Is it ketamine? Isn't that what Elon Musk is addicted to? Ketamine?
I don't know. David with a great point. Killed Matthew Perry. ZZ will be a great coach someday. I don't know if that's his intentions, but it's definitely a possibility.
I don't know if does he have the patience to be a coach? I mean, having the dog in you is great, but when you're a coach and you have it, it can be a little rough sometimes.
Yeah. And I want to get back to I think what should be the overarching theme of this chat. And that is, how much do you read into Rick Barnes staying at Tennessee for 1 more season, 2 more seasons, 3, 4, whatever? How much do you read into it based off this commitment?
5. He's got 5 more seasons.
Well, but answer the question. How much do you read into it based off the commitment?
A lot. I already believed it, but this just confirmed it. He's taking on another project.
See, I want to look at this individually. I think that he'll come back. I think he's got another year or 2 in him, maybe 3 or 4. But this doesn't affect me whatsoever. Rick Barnes strikes me as the type of guy that's going to keep working just as long as he's got that job and he's getting that paycheck. He believes that's the right way to be. And it is.
And we know this. Rick Barnes, let's just be honest. Do you think Rick Barnes drinks? I don't think he drinks a drop of alcohol.
I don't think so. But I don't know.
I think he grinds players in practice and then goes home and reads his Bible. Honestly, I think that's what he does every day.
Well, I think he's probably honest with the young man, but I don't think him in his heart of hearts knows if he's going to be Tennessee's coach next year.
I disagree. I think in his heart of hearts he knows. I think he's committed for the next 3 to 4 years. I do.
All right. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. How about we get to this day in Tennessee sports history, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln on Parkside Drive and, of course, on Kingston Pike as well. I can't tell you how happy I was with the buying process in my Jeep that I drove off the lot just a couple of weeks ago. Still enjoy it every day. No pressure. Everything was easy. We were in and out the door. I felt fantastic when I drove off the lot. Blessed to meet Andy White, and prayers to you at Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Check them out. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. It's time for This Day in Tennessee Sports History.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, Off the Hook Sports.
Someone said they had a kidney stone in Germany, and that's why they went with ketamine. The doctor went with ketamine. Wow, that's for animals. I thought I don't know that I want. First of all, I don't want to have any sort of medical emergency outside the United States of America. Can you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah. And I especially don't want the doc bringing up ketamine. All right. So Caleb, what do we got this day in Tennessee sports history?
On this day, in 2010, Tennessee shocked Ohio State they were a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State was a 2 seed. They shocked 2 seed Ohio State in the Sweet 16, 76-73, to reach their first ever Elite Eight. Wayne Chisholm, who was in a senior year, was the star of the game. He had 22 points and 11 rebounds. Brian Williams, name you forget about, had 9 points and 12 rebounds. Bobby Mays had 10 points, 2 assists, a steal. Bobby Mays coaches an AAU team now. JP Prince, who was not a scorer, came away with 14.6 assists and 2 steals, and also had the game-sealing block when Evan Turner was shooting a game-tying three. JP Prince blocked it. Clean block as time expired. And off the bench, Cameron Tatum had 11 points and a steal. And Tennessee probably would have won that game by more than they did if Bruce Pearl didn't embrace nepotism and give Stephen Pearl 8 minutes in that game.
Okay, now the message board is discussing whether or not Rick Barnes' strengths. I'll ask him at some point. We'll find out. But can I tell you about one of those players? I was told this by an owner of a local sports bar establishment that is no longer in business. So I can share this. And now it wouldn't even be, I don't know if it's cheating or not, to be real honest with you. It's just weird. So one time, one of those players you mentioned, I'm not going to tell you which one, was at this sports bar at about 2 a.m. And the owner said, it'd be great to have some jerseys that we could hang up from you guys. And they go, let's go. And they went and used the key fob, went into Thompson Bowling Arena and just took a bunch of jerseys that he hung on his walls at 2 o'clock in the morning, drove all the way. It was like a 30-minute drive too. And I don't think they were sober.
Well,
gone all kinds of ways sideways, couldn't it?
Yep. Well, I know one of those kids I named is a bit of a spoiled kid who liked to party, and he probably had more access than others because, sometimes the coach's son gets more access than others. Sorry.
No, it was not him. It was
not him. Really?
No. I don't think he would do something that stupid.
You really?
Yeah.
Somebody related to Bruce Pearl wouldn't do something that stupid?
Possibly. Amy says, I'm almost 60 and I've been to raves, no drugs needed, music and light show were enough. Amy, next time you go, just let me know.
Amy, let's party. Let's go.
Just as long as we're not knee deep in ketamine. That's what I'm trying to avoid. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, Donnie Tindle linked to McNeese State. Also, is it the ladies or the men that have the better shot at winning this week? Tony Jones will join us as well. And we'll get to, we're going to talk about Mike Matthews a little bit next, right?
Yep.
All right. 2 minutes off the hook sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
So Mike Matthews and other players will at some point probably have to explain themselves when they enter the transfer portal. You can go the James Pierce route if you want to and just not talk to the media for a year, which only hurt him, but you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your brand, and you could come off as a bit off-putting, which Pierce is facing right now with character questions. Unfair, I think, but the NFL guys go into this with their guard up because they don't want to look foolish by drafting the wrong guy. So Mike Matthews and any other person that enters the transfer portal should go out and speak about it and be open about it and be honest. It's our American society. It's capitalism. It is what it is. And I'm just curious what your take on what Mike Matthews had to say, Caleb. Does this make him any more endearing to Tennessee fans? Does the transfer portal even really matter as far as fandom? I'm not sure that it does.
I think what bothers me is I actually don't mind players that know they're about to be valuable entering the transfer portal and trying to leverage more NIL. That's the nature of the game. I don't like lying, honestly. I don't like pretending and them pretending they were feeling like a victim of some sort. So here's what Mike Matthews said. And you tell me if you believe him. And I'm going to give you the full quotes. He talked about last year not basically being a factor during the season. And he said, quote, "It was definitely a tough situation I had to go through," looking back on his decision to transfer. And then he said, "But in life, you always go through challenges, and new challenges build you for the next moment. So just looking forward for what the future has for me and planning to make it a big one." Then he says later, "I pretty much built a family here. It was definitely tough, just like thinking about doing that. But just the family and the coaching staff and all my teammates really helped me make my decision." Ian Maliava came out and said he spent a lot of time with Mike Matthews during the season. And this was so coordinated, by the way, by the media, just by the whole team, because Braylon Staley even comes out and says that it was kind of frustrating for Mike Matthews last year. Basically said it was frustrating for him not being able to be a factor in the offense. I don't believe any of this. I think Mike Matthews knew the minute he committed to Tennessee that he was going to be a non-factor his first year and then be a breakout star his second year. Okay?
Oh, I don't.
You think he really thought he was going to be the go-to receiver his first year?
I'm not saying you're not right, but that's not what you tell a recruit. You never tell a recruit that he's been told throughout the recruiting process what a huge impact he would have during his freshman season. There's no question in my mind.
So you think that did have a factor in him entering the transfer portal, not just him demanding more money?
Yes, and I'm not saying that Josh Heupel lied. I'm saying that when you get into the thick of the moment and a season's going on and you have to play two tights because your offensive tackles can't block wind, can't block anybody. Actually, wind would be tough to block. But, Caleb, I think you get in the thick of it, and Mike Matthews is suddenly on the outside looking in. That's the altruistic way of looking at it. I believe that Josh Heupel tells the guys they're going to have a big impact in year one, and he never has any intention of playing them in year one.
Either way, though, like, okay, you're either way, either way you say it, then you're saying Mike Matthews and his feelings were justified at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Let's make that a poll question.
Go for it. I don't understand. You should be. I saw enough in what he did in September. Was it against Kent State or was it against Chattanooga? Anyway, I saw enough where I thought he could be a factor. This offense, should be manageable. It shouldn't be that complicated where first-year guys can't come in and be a factor. But that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing guys come in, and now obviously with Cedric Tillman and Brew McCoy, there were injuries there. But we're seeing guys not have a big impact, whether they're transfer players at receiver, whether they're freshmen at receiver, whether they're quarterbacks, whether they're offensive guards. Yeah, I guess the only position where you've been thrown to the wolves would have been last year at the offensive tackle position. But I think there are probably a lot of guards like Sham Umarov that would have liked to crack at the starting lineup or more significant playing time than what he's received. That's just not going to happen. That's just not Josh Heupel's style.
Okay, so my whole question I'm saying is this. Did Mike Matthews test the portal because he was frustrated by his lack of impact in 2024? Answers, no, he's lying. It was about money. Or yes, he wanted to play more.
Well, I think it can be both because you can certainly feel a lot better about things. I don't know if you're having a tough time at work out there, our listeners or viewers, but it certainly would make it a lot better if you got a major raise. And I don't think he got chump change. I don't think he got a 10 to 20% raise. I think he probably got like 30 to 50% raise, if not more. They really didn't want to lose him. And also, Unsung points this out. I noticed that when he was on the field, he put forth effort in blocking. Yeah, I think the guy did everything right to be on the field. And I don't think that was what Josh Heupel ever had planned.
Well, this is kind of the unique thing about wide receivers, right? Is it's kind of like the hardest working ones can also kind of be the cancerous ones because they want to get the ball a lot. And the fact of the matter is, as a wide receiver, just naturally, you have to share glory with other people around you, right? Yes. And so, I mean, this is just to go back to the NFL, Terrell Owens for a minute. T.O. obviously had wrecked 3 teams in the chemistry. But Dave, did you notice no one ever questioned how hard T.O. worked when he was in the game or how hard he played? He was the hardest working player out there, played harder than anybody else. He was just so emotional. He couldn't get over if he wasn't playing enough. And also, I mean, he came back to the Super Bowl on a broken leg to play, and his quarterback decided to go get drunk the night before the game and threw up in the huddle. I mean, of course he was going to be frustrated by the Eagles with that. So with that in mind, it's kind of unique with Mike Matthews when you think about it that way. I do believe he played hard, but I can't imagine he thought he was going to supplant Brew McCoy last year or supplant. And so I thought that it was just kind of obvious that he was going to be a sporadic guy his first year. And then the next year, 2025, he would break out and become a star.
I would have totally agreed with you. I don't think he thought that.
Do you like that mentality that he didn't think that? Do you like the mentality of a player being like, I don't accept going to the bench?
Yeah, I don't like a guy that's okay with a year of. There have been some interesting cases. Nico's one. He had to put on more weight, right? I mean, I would have.
Manning was one. He didn't want to start his freshman year. He
right.
Had to.
So, I mean, I don't think it's in your best interest to start as a freshman, but listen, these guys are going to make all kinds of decisions that are not in their best interest. Dylan says, to me, Mike tested the portal because everyone left due to Kelsey Pope, and Mike was going to be the next one out. Then the rumors of Nico meeting with coaches and rumors of an offer for Nico to Miami. Now, there are 2 things in there. I've only heard that Kelsey Pope is popular among his players. So that surprises me. I don't know where you heard that. I'm not questioning it, but I am curious. And then Nico to Miami. I never heard that. I think Nico was all in on keeping Mike Matthews, which is why he took him to L.A.
I think so too. And by the way, are we thinking about if this whole story is true, what we're saying, maybe we do need to reevaluate what we're saying about Nico's leadership. Because Nico, maybe that's why he took Mike Matthews to LA. And that does speak well to his leadership, right? That he could convince Mike Matthews to stay by working out with him. Maybe he knew what he was doing.
No, I think that's totally what that trip was about.
So let's give Nico a lot more credit than we've given him with that in mind. He didn't, I mean, that speaks to a level of maturity for Nico Iamaleava that we haven't seen yet. We thought Nico was I go do my job and go home. And you're saying he took an extra initiative to make sure that the receiver he wants the most stays.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what that trip was all about.
That's Peyton Manning level leadership, Dave. That's Peyton Manning going, and you know the story, right? Didn't Peyton Manning go to Jamal Lewis's dorm room when he was a senior? Jamal Lewis was a freshman, and didn't he basically say, I need you this year as a running back. I need you to learn blocking schemes now because we need you to start.
Yeah, but they had a problem with they got caught up in themselves with throwing the football too much in general.
That was the coaches, though.
Yeah, but
Peyton Manning himself wanted Jamal Lewis to really come on board, didn't he? That was Peyton pushing Jamal Lewis to become a freshman.
I mean, you'd be crazy. I mean, Mark Levine was your other player, but it's like if you go back and look. I mean, no offense, Mark, but if you go back and look at that 97 game,
Yeah.
They didn't run the ball enough, period. I don't care who the tailback was.
But once Jamal Lewis got in, they ran it more. It's just he didn't start the first 4 games of the year. And the reason he didn't start is he wasn't picking up blocking teams. My understanding is Peyton Manning was going to Jamal Lewis's dorm room and saying, "You need to pick these up. I need you to start for me. I need you starting this year." Because Peyton Manning kind of knew his other running backs couldn't play.
Yeah. No offense, Mark.
Yeah. But that's leadership by Peyton because, like, guess what? What happened? Jamal Lewis became a starter and became a freshman All-American and honestly should have been a regular All-American that year. You know, that became the best. I don't care what anybody says. That 97 backfield, Peyton, Jamal Lewis. Find me a greater, more talented backfield in the history of college football. Peyton Manning to Jamal Lewis.
I wouldn't argue that. Only one of 8 people to rush for over 2,000 yards in the NFL.
And a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, and a Hall of Fame quarterback. I have trouble finding anybody that's been more impressive than that. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. You need to hear from Banks & Jones. If you find yourself in any sort of legal issue, they can take care of you. They're simply the best. Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. All right. Donnie Tindle linked to McNeese State, and Caleb did a little giggle this morning. Why Caleb is off base, this would be a great hire by McNeese State. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones. Donnie Tindle tied to the McNeese State job. That's a good job. And his show cause is nearly over. Why this would be a fantastic hire by McNeese State. And Caleb's like, what the H?
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun.
All right, Caleb. So Donnie Tindle linked to McNeese State. This is why he'd be a fantastic hire. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. The only thing he did wrong is legal now. Paying players, right?
No,
he had
academic fraud. He reportedly, according to multiple sources, he claims that these people had an axe to grind. I've never learned what that axe to grind is.
No.
But that they were told to doctor grades for players at Southern Miss.
Right. Okay. So, but would you agree he's a good X's and O's coach?
I think Donnie Tindle is the best X's and O's coach Tennessee ever hired in basketball.
Okay. So do you believe he's learned his lesson? 10 years is a long time. Now, I'm a little surprised he's getting a McNeese State type of offer, which was vacated by Will Wade, who was the guy who was paying players. That's a pretty good mid-major job. So I'm a little surprised he's getting that good of a job. I guess I thought probably Division II, like a Chattanooga or something that would take a risk on a guy because they need that sort of coach in their program. But I'm a little surprised by McNeese State that they would go in this direction.
I am not, and I said for a while, you thought I was going to disagree with you. I agree with you. Donnie Tindle's a great hire. And I said for a while that any smart that he would get a hire the minute his show calls us up. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Donnie Tindle would have ended up being the most successful coach in Tennessee basketball history. He had an amazing system. If you guys don't remember, here's what he did. It was a press on every made basket, which is Bruce Pearl style. Then his defensive scheme, Dave, was a matchup zone like what Rick Pitino runs at Louisville. And on offense, they ran the Kansas offense, the high-low motion offense, like what Bill Self does. That was a heck of a combination. And he was getting the players to run it, and he was brilliant on inbounds plays. Donnie Tindle was a better X's and O's coach than Bruce Pearl. This dude knew basketball. Look, I'm honest. I honestly think this is a heck of a hire. One, I mean, I don't think McNeese State I don't think you have to doctor grades at McNeese State. But
doctor grades at all anymore. Guys aren't going to class.
Yes, exactly.
The whole term student athlete needs to be replaced with employee. because that's what they are now.
Right. So this is a great hire if you're Donnie for McNeese State. And look, I don't think we're too far off from Donnie Tindle getting another Power 5 job. He's 54 years old. He'll have 2 good years at McNeese State, and then he'll probably get hired somewhere else the way Will Wade just got hired at NC State because he can recruit. He is an incredible head coach. The question is, I mean, and he's probably really hungry. And look, even if, I mean, he's not going to do this again. I mean, look, the show calls day, the firing ruined his life. I mean, it wasn't just him being fired.
10 years.
10 years of a show calls. And he ended up going through a divorce in the middle of this. Funny enough. Like, he was engaged when he got hired at Tennessee and then goes, I mean, it's just a really, really dark period for him in his life.
Imagine the money was a little bit tighter around the Donnie household.
Yes, because guess what? He was fired for calls. They didn't have to pay him.
Yeah.
On his buyout and his contract. So there was no.
His ex wasn't real happy about that at the time.
Did you hear that, or did you know about that, or
no? But you just got to think if she gets half.
Oh yeah, that's true. Donnie. Now she gets nothing because whatever Donnie Tindle gets now, they're already divorced. So Donnie Tindle gets to keep it. You're right. I didn't even think about. She probably did divorce him thinking that, and she's like, "Wait, what?" No,
McNeese State could become a pipeline for SEC coaching hires. Ole Miss and Auburn are always looking for a used winner on a budget.
A used winner on a budget.
That's pretty good.
Nice.
That's pretty good.
Let me ask you. Okay, if you can't do it at Tennessee because that's the school that fired him. But if you are like an SEC school and Donnie Tindle gets McNeese State to like the Sweet 16 in a couple of years and does really well, would you hire him?
Yeah,
I would too.
Yes, I would too.
I would too.
But let me ask you this: of the coaches that Tennessee has parted ways with, not on grand terms, let me ask you about a couple. If you were in a position where you really needed this dude, would you ever rehire Lane Kiffin?
I would have 100% rehired Lane Kiffin back in 2017 when Butch Jones was fired.
That's hot.
Yes.
And Lane taking the job. Would you ever hire back Bruce Pearl?
No, I wouldn't. One, his age is a problem because he's already in his mid 60s, and I'm not like age shaming, but like, he'll be. You can't start with somebody at that age because he'll be pushing it, and so he could coach into his 80s. He could coach into his 90s. Who knows? But I still wouldn't rehire him. There's that. There is Bruce
Rick
Pearl.
Pitino looks like he's coaching into his 90s.
That's true. Bruce Pearl also. It's a Donnie Tindle. See, Lane Kiffin left. Tennessee fired Bruce Pearl because of a scandal, and then Bruce Pearl went out of his way to undercut the future coach publicly, multiple times.
He undercut the future coach, and he also. I couldn't get over this if I were Tennessee. He lied to. Let's make it a poll question. Which coach would you be most likely to rehire? So it'd be Tindall. It would be Lane Kiffin, Bruce Pearl, and then I want to include Jeremy Pruitt, and I'm going to tell you why here in a second. Okay, but first, Pearl.
No one's going to mention Jeremy Pruitt. No one's going to vote him.
No. Let me get to it. It's Pearl. Pearl lying to the NCAA and UT. That to me is a hands down fireable offense, and I could never trust him again. Yes,
I totally agree.
Ursus, I agree with you. I'm sorry, but Pearl lied. I just can't go down that route.
He lied. And then he pretended he was a victim for when he got fired, when the university had to fire him. Pearl is, and also, I mean, like, here's the other part, and we have to point this out, guys. Let's throw this in here. Even though they're no longer owned by the Haslams, Pearl was directly connected to the Pilot Flying J scandal, where they were his family was connected to the Pilot Flying J scandal, where they were
those tapes. They're quite intriguing.
Yes, where they were literally, his daughter was running a gas station that was literally stealing money from poor people, filling up their card.
And the tape I heard was it was like this. It was like, oh my goodness, this guy's taking $20,000 and $25,000 a month. This guy got oh my goodness, what's her name again? I can't remember.
I believe it's Jackie.
Yeah, or Jacqueline or something like that. And he goes, oh my goodness, she's taking over $60,000 a month.
Yeah,
I mean, she was even amongst thieves. She was considered one of the most egregious cheaters.
And a member of a rich family with the coach's salary stealing from poor people. Just awful stuff. Yes. And also the other part about Pearl, this is what I mean. Pearl's a low character guy. He's just not a good dude. And then You hire him, he's going to make you bring on Steven Pearl to be the coach in waiting. So that's the other reason I wouldn't hire Bruce Pearl.
I was told by somebody very close to the situation that he would have gone to Louisville had they promised Steven Pearl the coach in waiting job, which would have been a huge, monstrous mistake.
Exactly.
Now the other one I want to throw out there at you, if you can get the 4 on the poll question.
Well, let's. I just want to point this.
Hold on a second.
Well, before I get to the poll question, I just wanted to recap the poll that's up now.
Okay, recap it. What do you got?
People agree with me, but slightly. Did Mike Matthews test the portal because he was frustrated by his lack of impact? 54%. No, he's lying. It was about money.
Okay. Now, I think it's all about money, ultimately. But the other one, and play along with me here. Okay. You have a coach sitting out there with ties to your program that is a great defensive coach. That what he did while at Tennessee would not be legal now. He could pay players all he wants to. He doesn't even have to put them in a Chick-fil-A bag. He can put them in the nicest bag he can find, and he can pay for it. The boosters will pick up the check. No, Jeremy Pruitt's not a head coach. But let's say Tim Banks gets a solid job next year, solid job offer, and he bolts. And I think the time with Tim Banks is limited. I don't think you're going to have him forever. Like Tennessee was fortunate enough to have John Chavis. Maybe not. But Caleb, ultimately, I think Tennessee would be foolish not to consider Pruitt as a defensive coordinator. If he's out there, what he did in terms, he's a great talent evaluator. Let me just ask you first that question. Would they be crazy to consider it? And then the second question I've gotten for you is, would Tennessee's coaching staff be as good or better with Pruitt as opposed to Tim Banks?
So to the first question, no, they would not be crazy. So this is how I frame the question. Which former head coach would you want to see the Vols hire back? Bruce Pearl, Donnie Tindle, Lane Kiffin, or Jeremy Pruitt as an assistant?
Yes. DC specifically, but.
Right. And also not just DC, kind of like we talked about a while ago, general manager, scouting talent. Jeremy Pruitt, as a recruiter, dude knows talent. He's better than anybody on Tennessee staff as far as a talent evaluator, except for maybe Rodney Garner. But I think Pruitt might be better than Rodney Garner at evaluating talent, if I'm going to be honest. So Pruitt, I would say, as an assistant of those four, I'm with you. I'm with you. And yes, I think it could complement what I think he would be as good. Here's the thing. Here's the issue. Tim Banks plays a complementary defense where he kind of plays to Josh Heupel's tempo. And then he showed last year when they slow down the tempo that he can complement that. So he showed some versatility. But guys, we're forgetting Pruitt has versatility too. He was trained in the Nick Saban, going up against the Nick Saban offense of the early 2010s. But when he became the defensive coordinator at Alabama, guess what? It was when they were running tempo, when Lane Kiffin was there. So he knows how to go up against both styles. So he knows, and again, I can't stress this enough. He knows ball. Jeremy Pruitt knows ball. And that's one of the, if you're just talking ball from an analytical standpoint, there's probably not many people better than Jeremy Pruitt. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. No. He was one of the first to share with me the concept of how edge rushing had changed. The fact that he doesn't care if you put a hand down, if you're in a 2-point stance, you're in a 3-point stance. But the love of all that's holy. I don't understand why James Pierce was in a 4-point stance all of last year, but whatever you'd be most comfortable with. So rank them 1 through 4. Which of the coaches would you be more apt to bring back as opposed to no way, not doing it?
Number 1 is Jeremy Pruitt as an assistant. I'm higher on it the more we talk about it, and I'm totally on your side now. I was a total no, but as an assistant, yeah, Jeremy Pruitt as an assistant is number 1. Number 2 for me is Lane Kiffin. And I know it comes down to Lane Kiffin or Donnie Tindle, but I think Lane Kiffin's proven himself a little bit more. Look, I think Lane Kiffin is a brilliant X's and O's coach. And we had, in the past, Jimmy Hyams and I spoke about the fact he talks about how Lane Kiffin got fired by USC and it was unfair. He can't blame the probation for that because he still had a good roster. But I'm like, yeah, but injuries can really, if you don't have a full roster, injuries can wreck you.
I remember Jimmy talking about that. He and I disagree on that a little bit too.
Yeah, I think
you just have 65 scholarship players. You can dip down into a pretty low level of football player pretty easily with just one injury, 2 injuries at the same position, and you're pretty darn far down on the totem pole, right?
Yeah, you're way far down at that point. And I totally agree. So I think Lane Kiffin, look, put it this way. Okay, I do agree with Jimmy. He probably would have gotten Tennessee in trouble before winning a national title had he stayed at Tennessee and not been humbled. But let's say he doesn't. Dave, you covered that team. All the pieces were in place. Like you knew, right, that if Lane Kiffin didn't get in trouble, Tennessee was going to be a top 5 program within 2 years because of the way he was running the program, the way he was recruiting, the way he knew ball.
I feel that way now. I didn't feel that way then.
Okay, I can see that. I saw the pieces in place for what Lane Kiffin was doing.
Well,
the way he was recruiting.
But I'll stand by what I thought at the time. He wasn't mature enough to win at a high level.
No, could you imagine Lane Kiffin coaching Tyler Bray? The level of the egotistical level of that, and it wasn't good with Derek Dooley, but
just be double dating all the time. All right, they'd be on
they have the same All
right, Caleb. We're gonna get to Tony Jones here momentarily. You want to wrap this up? Anything else you got?
Nope. So Lane Kiffin's number 2 for me. Donnie Tindle's number 3. Bruce Pearl's number 4. Bruce Pearl's dead last on the list to me, honestly. I actually think Donnie Tindle's a more decent person than Bruce Pearl is.
All right, Lady Vols or men, better shot at winning this week? Caleb leaves that as an open-ended question because he didn't say winning 1 game or winning 2 games. We'll discuss. I'm still, quite frankly, we haven't talked as much Lady Vols as I thought we would. I'm still a little surprised they were able to get to this point where they are. So we'll discuss. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, Caleb. We've said all along that Tennessee's draw on the men's side was a good draw for them. Tennessee will face Kentucky, and then they will move on to the Elite Eight with a chance to go to the Final Four. I think they'll play Houston. Caleb, who do you have in your bracket?
Oh, I think they'll play Houston too.
Okay. Then the Lady Vols, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think they'd get past Ohio State since that game was in Columbus, but they suddenly have a pretty good draw as well. What do you make of the 2 games that the Lady Vols have coming up? And then we'll get to our poll question. which will be which team wins the most, or how do you want to say it?
Which team has the best chance? Which team has the best chance of going to the Final Four?
Okay. So what do you got? Who are they facing this week? By the way, an update on our poll question. Which former Tennessee head coach would you want to see Vols hire back? Bruce Pearl, 31%. Donnie Tindle, 12%. Lane Kiffin, 25%. Jeremy Pruitt as an assistant. This thing's taken off. All right, Caleb.
So 31%. You didn't even say how much at 31%.
Yeah, 31%. Sorry. All right, Caleb, go ahead.
All right, so Tennessee, I think we've talked about Tennessee playing Kentucky and Kentucky sweeping Tennessee during the regular season. I've talked about their tempo, how this would be their toughest matchup en route to the Final Four. They either win this game, they either lose here, or they make the Final Four, and I'm sticking by that. But I actually think because of the toughness of the Sweet 16 matchup, the Lady Vols have a better chance of going to the Final Four than the men. The Lady Vols are facing Texas on Saturday in the Sweet 16, the number 1 seed Longhorns. Tennessee lost to Texas, Dave, in the regular season, 80-76. Point of order. That was a road game. Also, point of order. Kim Caldwell was not coaching in that game because she was giving birth. So a little bit of a distraction on when they lost to Texas at Texas. They're a really good matchup for Texas. They're fresh now. Steve Hamer has convinced me that those 2 weeks off have totally rejuvenated them. Their legs are under them now. They are totally fresh, so they can run this 12-deep system where they just go all in, and they can wear you down in a game doing that, and they will be fresh enough to do that. And I would like to point out that Texas does also play deep, but Texas has 2 players that they have one player who averages 29.5 minutes a game, another one averaging 31.3 minutes a game, and Tennessee doesn't have anybody averaging 25 minutes a game. So Tennessee's going to be fresher. On top of that, and here's the biggest thing, and I don't know if you guys have ever been to or watched a women's NCAA tournament game in the regionals, but if you know any history about it, wherever Tennessee goes, they're the home team. Okay, the Lady Vol fans pack it. This game's in Birmingham. Where do you don't think there's going to be some Knoxville people make the trip to Birmingham, Dave? And they're going to pack
Birmingham, the armpit of the South. All right, Tony Jones joins us now, a former associate head basketball coach. Let me ask you this question that we were just bantering about. The Lady Vols or the men? Whose chances do you like more this weekend in advancing to the Final Four?
Who do the Lady Vols play? Excuse me for being, not abreast of the Lady Vols.
They play Texas on the road, or they play Texas, not on the road. They play Texas and Birmingham. They lost to Texas by 4 on the road earlier this year, Tony, but that game, it was only by 4, and Kim Caldwell was not coaching because she was giving birth that day. So they were a little bit distracted.
She had an excuse.
I've seen Texas play. They're good. They'll handle. They'll be prepared to play. I know the coach at Texas will have them prepared to play. I think Tennessee's. I like their chances a little bit better. I like their chances against Kentucky. Now I'm gonna tell you, I've in my brackets and just by my astute knowledge, I think Houston will edge Tennessee out in the Elite Eight game because I got Houston beating my favorite son, Auburn, in the finals. I think Houston and Kelvin Sampson will win the national championship this year.
Wow. Okay.
So
I don't have them going that far, but I do have them beating Tennessee in the final moments. What's your Twitter handle, by the way, Tony?
My Twitter handle?
Yes.
T Jones Live.
I got you. All right. Go ahead, Caleb.
So you think the men have a better chance than the women, Tony?
Yeah, I think for the women play Thursday or Friday.
Saturday. They play Saturday.
Okay, they play Saturday. The men play Friday. The men will win Friday. The women will lose Saturday.
Okay, so you got Texas beating. See, what I said is, I don't know if you heard before we hopped on, is I think the home court advantage can be a factor on the women's side because, as you know, Tony, when the Lady Vols are in the NCAA tournament, they have home court advantage no matter where they are because the Lady Vol fan base travels so much.
I agree with that. Texas has been just so good all year long. Obviously they were number 1 in the country for a number of weeks. And they got that horse. They got an unbelievable player. And I think, when you have the best players, when you start getting deep into this tournament, they usually rise to the top.
So
I know you want to get. Do you want to keep one here? Or do you want to move?
Well,
forward?
just real quick, Dave, you got to give your take. Who's going further, Tennessee men or women?
I think they're both going to lose in the Elite Eight.
Wow, so you do have them upsetting Texas, the Lady Vols.
I do. I'm going to pick them to upset Texas.
So I say the women. Tony says the men. Dave says they both lose the same round.
Went right down the middle of that street, didn't I? All right, Caleb. We want to preview Kentucky now and get Tony's insight into this because Tony is fantastic. If you don't remember him, he's on with Mark Packer and does all that stuff, and he's associate head basketball coach during an incredible time in Tennessee basketball history. What do you think of the whole concept of it's hard to beat a team 3 times? Do you believe there's something to that?
Yeah, it's credibility to that. I mean, it's very difficult, and the reason I say that is because both of these teams are evenly matched, and it's a psyche that goes into it. When you're a competitor and you've gotten beaten twice, you put so much energy, so much effort, so much focus. The Tennessee coaching staff didn't have not one iota of anybody not paying attention to this scout. They each and every player was on point watching video. They're taking their scouting report home and going over it over and over again. When you're a high-level athlete, high-level competitor, you just don't want to lose multiple times to a team. Conversely, Kentucky is saying, okay, we know it's hard to beat a team 3 times. We could beat Tennessee. We know we can beat Tennessee. And they may come in with a tinge of confidence that that's false evidence appearing real, because it's not. And I really think, in addition to Tennessee's got some great players, I think that they're going to beat Kentucky. And I think it's going to be handily.
Tony, let me ask you this, just about the way Kentucky swept Tennessee in the regular season. They beat them by 5 in Knoxville, and then they won by 11 in Lexington. You and I talked the day after Tennessee lost at home, and I think you actually agreed with us and being a little bit critical of Chaz Lanier not being more aggressive. He's definitely changed. But I guess the point I'm getting at is, with the 11-point win in Lexington, does that sweep, was that a fluke, or is that actually a matchup problem for Tennessee, Kentucky?
I don't think so. I was at the game at home, and Kentucky controlled the game. I mean, and then I think we talked about ZZ shooting a lot of threes too. We just attempted so many threes in that particular game, and then that's just not our MO. That's just not our path to success to loft threes. I mean, obviously you got guys like Chaz and Gainey will knock down some shots, and if Igor is open, he'll knock down some shots and things of that nature. But I don't think ZZ should be out there hunting threes. And I think he should be trying to get downhill. Tennessee does really well when they score points in the paint. And I think that's the recipe to beat Kentucky. And obviously, Kentucky is not a good defensive team, guys. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, their record speaks for itself, the amount of points they allow. I think Tennessee's going to be able to score, and I think Tennessee's going to be so locked in, just like I alluded to that scout. They're going to be so locked in to taking away the things that Kentucky's personnel do well, and I think that's going to enable them to come out victorious.
Well, and everybody wants to say second round, Rick, which I think is unfair. But let's face it, Mark Pope has not had any success in the SEC tournament. He hasn't been in some of those really, really high pressure situations like it'll be this week. So I think Tennessee has a clear coaching advantage. What do you think of Mark Pope?
I like him. I like him personally. I think he's a solid coach. I think he's exactly what that fan base needed. I think they needed a little breath of fresh air from Cal, and I think he's brought a different type of approach to recruiting, different type of approach schematically on what they do. And I think the fan base has embraced him. And they've had some good victories now. I mean, let's don't discount the victories that they've had this year. It's going you know, it's going to be a tough matchup, but I still think Tennessee's going to handle it as it pertains to Mark Pope not having, you know, that DNA, that type of experience that Rick Barnes had, a number of NCAA tournament appearances. Let's throw that out the window because, you know, the players is going to be the ones that make the plays.
Tony, I want to reflect with you for a minute because you have experience with a team that swept a national champion. Your first year at Tennessee when y'all swept Florida.
Right.
And I think my understanding, and I wanted you to reflect on this for me, but if I'm correct, y'all could barely practice in March because y'all were so worn down, right? But y'all or in February, but y'all still found a way to get that win at Florida late. How did that happen?
That was a great victory. I'll never forget it. That was the game where Bruce soaked his shirt and had to take off it, and you know you could see all the perspiration all over him. And then a key call that BP made at the end of the game. We called 55 side, and 55 is our full court defense. 55 side is when we deny the ball in bounds on sideline out of bounds plays. And Dane Bradshaw made an unbelievable play. He got the steal, made the field goal. It put us up, and we were never headed. So that brings back memories, especially just watching that Chris Lofton documentary on SEC Network. I don't know if you guys happen to be able to watch it. It was awesome, and I don't think they had clips of that game, but they had clips of the game we beat Florida at Tennessee, where everybody stormed the court, which it was very special.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Portions of the program brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. Sorry, Caleb, go ahead.
Yeah, so quick follow-up that because we're talking about Kentucky, tough to beat a good team 3 times. If y'all had played Florida in the NCAA tournament, would y'all have beaten them a 3rd time, Tony?
That's a loaded question, Caleb. Would have been tough. It would have been tough. I mean, obviously they had all those pros, Joakim Noah, Al Holford,
Corey Brewer,
all those guys played in the NBA. Like I always said, the cream always rises to the top when the money's on the line. It would have been tough. We would have competed, but I would have went for the Volunteers.
Yeah, it's funny. You go back that year when, I don't know if you remember this, our old buddy Mike Griffith back in the day. Got Dick Vitale on. I think Dick Vitale was just using the restroom at his favorite restaurant. He didn't know he was on the air, and he said, "I'm just going to tell you, Horford's a lot better than Noah. Billy Donovan told me." He said, he said he didn't want me telling everybody, and he's on the air while he's.
Wow,
yeah.
I remember that. I remember that.
That was.
Cool. I remember that. Mike Griffin. Is he still working the Georgia beat?
He's still a goofball. I mean, just to be real honest with you, he was filling in for me that day, and my phone started blowing up because I was under the weather, and I was like, "What's he done?" He couldn't just go do a 2-hour show and it be uneventful. What are some key matchups you think with this Tennessee-Kentucky game? What are some key players for those that maybe have seen Kentucky on a limited basis?
Always, being able to stop always going to be key. Richards is. I still don't think he's back to 100%. The guard that I'm talking about, the guard I'm talking about.
The Butler kid, or is it Turner?
Butler. Richards, I'm thinking of the kid from Florida, but Butler, I don't think he's totally healthy. I think that's going to be a key matchup that probably will favor us. Williams is a good player. I really like Williams. I like his ability to handle the ball, being 6'11", 7 foot, and, the way he's scoring around the basket. So I think Felix is going to have his hands full, but they're going to have to stop. They're going to have to stop 2 people. They're going to have to stop Chaz Lanier, and they're going to have to stop Mr. Gainey. And his contribution, he's not a guy coming off the bench. He's the 6th starter, and his contribution it's going to be tough because he's out there, and I think with the coaching staff blessing, he's out there hunting shots, and that's garnered him a lot of confidence, and that's why he's proven to be one of the better offensive players for the Volunteers this year.
Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Caleb?
Tony, so we talked about this yesterday, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because the resident Pistons fan on the show, I'm sure, remembers the Rasheed Wallace guarantees back in the day. And so Lamont Butler saying that we're battle tested and we're going to win. That's what he said about Kentucky facing Tennessee. Him saying that, is that him just trying to preach confidence to himself, or is he a future Rasheed Wallace? This is a Rasheed Wallace moment.
And sometimes, you know, and I don't know if you guys are big boxing fans, sometimes boxers make those statements to try and motivate themselves and psych themselves up to think that they can win when they know they have some questions in their mind. And I would say the latter with the young man, Mr. Butler. I think he's got some apprehension about this matchup, and I think he knows Tennessee is very talented and Tennessee's very hungry. So obviously, on the other side, you know, that's bulletin board material for the Tennessee Volunteers. They don't need any added motivation. They're going to be ready to play. That coaching staff is going to have them prepared, and they're going to put them in the best position to be successful. Mr. Butler is he's kind of scared there, Caleb.
Whoa, Tony Jones says Lamont Butler is scared.
Scared. All right, Tony, we appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. I do want to get together with you before, sooner rather than later, but you're a busy man. We'll work in your schedule.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Gotta love Tony.
Have a good one, Tony.
He's a former associate head basketball coach at the University of Tennessee. Portions of the program brought to you by our fantastic friends at Where, the UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. Caleb, I guess I'm going to sit on this. What was the word? Pulpit. What word would I want to use? Sit on this argument. I just think when you beat somebody twice in a row, you should have another level of confidence. Maybe I'm by myself. I can't remember exactly where you stand on that. I just don't buy it.
I just think it depends. Okay, you can beat a team 3 times if you're better than that team. And so, or if you match it well, so is Tennessee better? Do you know what this all reminds me of? I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Dave, do you remember the Titans Super Bowl run in '99 when they first moved to Nashville?
I do.
I don't know if people remember how they got here, but this is the stat of stats in the NFL. Somehow that year, the Jacksonville Jaguars managed to have the best record in the NFL without beating one team with a winning record. They went 14-2.
I remember that. That's when they overcompensated expansion teams, right?
Yes. And Jacksonville's only losses that year, the entire year, were to one team, the Titans. The only team with the winning record they played all year. They lost to them twice during the regular season. And then Tennessee went to Jacksonville in the AFC title game, and Jacksonville was favored by 7. And I heard constantly, it's hard to beat a good team 3 times, and Tennessee blows them out 33-14 to get to the Super Bowl. What we really found out was Jacksonville was a bad football team. They just played nobody that year, had the easiest schedule in world history.
So in other words, let me, if I can summarize, you think that Tennessee was just the Titans were a significantly better team than Jacksonville, whereas you don't believe Kentucky is a significantly better team than Tennessee.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay.
I think
I tend to agree with that. Brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNewbertCollision.com, JoeNewbertCollision.com. Tomorrow on the program, we'll have a preview of Kentucky. We'll dive even deeper into that as Vols have both teams in the Sweet 16. We'll also get some more reaction from Tennessee football practice. Hope you appreciate that. Be sure you're subscribed and you have all your notifications on. And by the way, I was doing some research. Our audio only platforms are just exploding and doing incredibly well. So thank you so much for being a part of what we do. Just to make sure you are subscribed and you have your notifications on. For Caleb